short-term rental industry is absolutely collapsing in 2024. At least that's what I see everywhere on the internet, but there's something that you can do about it. Look, someone created an AirBNB hashtag last year and people got absolutely crippled, 20, 30, 40% drops in revenue, but there's things that you can implement to combat this. I'm one of those people that actually took that into my own hands and made changes to my listings, my investing strategy, and I actually thrived. I was up 7.9% on my portfolio, breaking $1 million in net income. That's $1 million in net income, not gross. And in this video, I'm gonna share the things that I've done to basically future-proof my short-term rental portfolio. Look, so I want you to take a second. If you are thinking about getting into short-term rentals, it's actually a really good time if you do it correctly. If you are in a short-term rental now as an investor in one of those big markets like Destin or 30A, you know, the Seaside area, the Seagrove area, the Watercolor area, down between PCB and Destin, it's going to be a tough go for you. You're going to have to make some pretty big changes and upgrades to be able to compete. But that's all this really is competition. You hear the stuff online, right? You see the stuff in the media with the Airbnb hashtag that was put out last year. And it's true. The market, the segment absolutely got flooded with saturation. Saturation can be a good thing because what it does is it weeds out the weak in any business. And that same thing is happening inside of short-term rentals right now. And it's been happening. It's nothing new, right? But here's what's on the forefront for us. As I'm releasing this video, and I should never time code this, but it is January 2024. What's going to happen in the next 90 days? The Fed has already announced that they are going to lower interest rates. I'm a firm believer that that's going to be 0.5%, might be a quarter, but I think they're going to come out strong. It's an election year. Look, Biden wants to get reelected. All kinds of crazy stuff happens in election years. But if you go back and you study historicals of what's happened during election years, I believe wholeheartedly they're going to drop 0.5 point in March. And if that happens in March, you know what's going to happen? People are going to get off the sidelines and they're going to get back in. And that's going to happen at probably like 10, 20, 30% of those people. It's not going to be everybody. That's not going to be a big enough pendulum swing for the market to flood like it did in late 2020 and 2021, but it's going to be the starting point. Here's what the tipping point is. The tipping point is really going to be around June. In June is when we expect the second rate reduction from the Fed. If that's another 0.5 point, and I don't believe it'll be that big, I think I'm probably 70-30, and nobody knows this, but my prediction is that it's going to be 0.25 point. That will be enough to swing us down pretty close to 6% interest rates. And those people that have been investing or looking at 8.5%, 9%, 6, 7, 8, 9 months ago, they're going to see that they can buy a $700,000 property or even a single family home as a primary, and they're going to be able to have a significant drop in their monthly mortgage. When that happens, the psychology changes, right? So you're going to see people flooding back into the short-term rental space because really, if you're an investor in real estate and you've looked at long-term, you look at midterm, you look at short-term, the three fundamental different kind of timing variations from an investment standpoint, short-term rentals still today are the strongest investment. It's still the strongest asset class if you're looking on cash flow, if you're looking on IRR, that's internal rate of return. That's why a guy like me who's been in real estate for, 26 years now, kind of dating myself, but I started in the long-term rent and then I migrated after many, many years into short-term rentals because I want the higher multiple of return. And I'm here to tell you, it's still here today. The proof is in the pudding for myself. I've got mastermind members that are very successful. I've got a Facebook group with 31,000 investors in it, my Build Short-Term Rental Wealth Facebook group. And the majority of them, are thriving. Let me tell you who's not thriving right now and who's really going to be affected. And this is applicable with the short-term rental class because it used to be, and I'm going to go back to 2020. COVID started really in February is when it started sweeping through the United States of 2020. By March, companies like Stay Alfred were already out of business and we were on lockdown. And when we were on lockdown, everybody struggled. Nobody was going to short-term rentals. But if you lived in the South, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, or I should say if you own there, the beaches opened relatively quickly and basically things started just going crazy because of EIDL, because of PPP. People had this money, and then that was the strongest time that we've ever seen. And that was the boom. That was the gold rush for short-term rentals. Well, what happened is most of you got in at that time. So you don't know what reality was prior to that in 15, 16, 17, 18. I lived that reality. Right now, we are back to 2018 numbers, 2019 numbers, and they were good back then. It was still the number one asset class to invest into. That's where you need to have this mindset shift. You're not going to see the gold rush numbers that you saw in late 2020 and 2021 and early 2022. Those days are gone, and we will probably never see those. But if you were in at that time and able to leverage your rankings, leverage your ADR, leverage your brand, because of all those eyeballs that were seeing your listing and staying with you and getting 5-star reviews, you're set for success moving forward. That's how I was able to grow my portfolio last year, because I'm focusing on return guests. Let that sink in for a second. Return guests. You think about it. How do you travel? Do you go to different places every single time that you travel? If you're younger, you probably do. If you're my age, you probably don't. You're a creature of habit. You've taken family vacations. You go back consistently to those similar locations. So what happened prior to people like me starting to coach and teach short-term rentals is people weren't really doing that marketing. So number one thing, if you want to combat the absolute collapse of the average properties, that's the middle property. Number one is you need to identify, if you currently own, what is the real value of your property to your guests? What percentile, if you use AirBNB or STR Insights, what percentile do you operate in right now? Because if you're in that 50th or 75th percentile, you're right in the middle. I outperform the 90th percentile of STR Insights and AirBNB portfolio-wide for all the properties that I own by 52%. That means the top of the top, like the top 5%, 10% here, and I'm way up above it. And there's a very distinct strategy of why I'm there. Because I'm a firm believer, and I see it every day, in inside of our industry and outside of our industry, which are the indicators of what's coming to us. Do you remember a business called The Gap in every shopping mall around the country? Think about that for a second. You do. It's gone. It's gone. Do you remember Kmart? Gone, or pretty much extinct. Not quite all the way. Sears? Gone. Here's what's happened. And you and I as consumers are the ones that determine that, whether we shop there or we don't. You know what's still around? Nordstrom. You know what's still around and thriving? TJ Maxx. You know what's gone? Bed Bath & Beyond. TJ Maxx, Home Goods here, right in the middle, Bed Bath & Beyond. Gone. Nordstrom up here. Struggling? Macy's. They're gonna be gone. Sears, Kmart in the middle. Gone. Think about restaurants that are struggling. Red Lobster, Olive Gardens, Ruby Tuesdays. Those are the next ones that are going to be gone probably this year, to be honest with you. They might be big enough to be able to sustain longer, but they're gone. Pier 1 Imports, gone. Restoration Hardware, still here. Home Goods, still here at the bottom. Middle America is getting squeezed right now. And when Middle America gets squeezed, that same thing is happening in our properties. So if you have that very average, normal, even good 3-bedroom, 2-bath that's 2 blocks off the beach, or it's not lakefront, or it's not in a prime location in an urban area to get access to the Staples Center, or in the heart of Napa Valley, or right in the middle of the business district in Philly, you don't have a prime location. And that is what is being affected right now. I use Branson, Missouri as an example, as a vacation rental market that's been blown up with construction of all these same type of condos, all these same type of cabins, all these same types of houses. I believe it's one of the absolute worst freaking places to invest now, but because the herd is flocking there, people are seeing it on social media. Oh, I do great in Branson. We know who most of those people are. They're the builders, and they're the developers, and they're the real estate agents that want to sell you stuff. You don't see the successful hosts trying to blow up that market. And because there's so many white 5, 6, 7-bedroom built for STR places in Branson, it's not really the strongest. It's not even in my top 25 investable markets. So number one is you need to evaluate what you have today if you're a current investor. And if you're going to be a first-time investor, steer away from the herd. That's my number one piece of advice. Look, I built an $18.8 million portfolio that yields $1,080,000 in net income last year on about $2.4 million in revenue. Let that sink in for a second. I only own 12 properties. I don't need to have 50. I don't need to have 60. This is the model that I teach, and it's based off of Mike Michalowicz's pumpkin plan. So when I get a property that is on the bottom of my portfolio, it's still cash flowing. There's no question. I don't have anything that's negative cash flow, and it's a pretty decent investment. But as the equity grows, I tap into that. And I do what I call a return on equity audit. When I do that and I see, oh, I've got $200,000 in equity, but I'm only doing $40,000 a year in cash flow, that's great for most people, but it's going to take me 5 years to get to that $200,000 mark. I know that if I sell that property, get that $200,000 back, and then go and reinvest it, I can get a better property today, specifically when the interest rates were higher, because it's been a buyer's market. I can negotiate price. I can get concessions on the back end potentially. I can even do, some after renovation valuation deals with bankers to where I can pull some cash back out at closing to where I don't have to come out of pocket for design or renovation. It's just been easier to be able to get better deals. So I always want to, if I'm an owner currently, the number two thing is I want you to look at your cash on equity. And if you have cash on equity, if you have equity in a property that's doing like long-term rents to where, you've got $200,000 in equity in a $600,000 or $700,000 property, and you're only doing $1,500 a month, 18 grand, let's just for argument's sake, round that up to 20 grand net a year, and you got $200,000 in capital, you're looking at a 10-year return. That's a crappy investment. That's an LTR investment. I don't even need to go in and add appreciation, principal pay down, cost segregation, tax benefits, accelerated depreciation, all that type of stuff. I'm just looking literally at cash flow. You add all those other things on, and you definitely want to level up. So that's the number two thing if you're currently an owner. Number three is your pricing strategy. If you are not really, really good at your pricing, and like number one, if you're doing manual pricing, like a lot of property managers do, and kind of mom and pop, and I am a mom and pop, just FYI, with only 12 properties. I'm not this big, huge company. I just know how to build super properties and super portfolios and maximize my return on investment. I'm not talking about going and buying $2 or $3 million properties. I'm talking about taking $500,000 to $800,000 properties and turning them into $1 million properties that produce like $200,000 a year in revenue and $75,000 to $100,000 a year in net income. That's what I specialize in. And if you follow these things that I'm sharing with you, you can do that exact same thing. One of those things is revenue management. There's some great tools in our industry, Price Labs, Wheelhouse, Beyond. I use Price Labs. I love Price Labs. It's a dynamic pricing tool. It has AI built into it. It tracks the demand. It knows it's linked into AirBNB, to Verbo. It knows what everybody else is pricing, and you can set dynamic pricing parameters. You can set seasons. You can control your minimum nights. And you can be that person that's a busy W-2. You might be a doctor or an attorney, and you can actually go in to Price Labs and create pricing models one time and set it and forget it. And that's okay. And that's way better than doing manual pricing. Typically, most people who go from manual pricing to using a tool, a dynamic pricing tool like Price Labs, will increase their revenue by 20 to 30%. Now, I go one level above that. Every third day, really 3 days a week, so approximately every other day, day and a half, I'm in and I'm doing manual research. So I subscribe to their weekly marketly research reports. And then I'm going in and I'm actually doing what Avery Carl, member of my super team, calls the enemy method. And I'm going in and doing manual research as well as letting Price Labs do the dynamic pricing, because I want to make sure that I'm very strategically priced based on market lead time. So you need to look at KPIs of like market lead time. And if you have a 100-day lead time, there's a really distinct strategy that you need to be implementing to maximize your return on investment, maximize your ADR, your average daily rate. And if you're way out, like if you're 200 days out, so think about the psychology of that. a lot of people, like in the Smokies, which is an occupancy-driven market, they wear pride on their shoulder that they are sold out for the summer, or their beach property in Gulf Shores or Destin sold out for the summer before January 1st. Well, understand that the first official booking day for summer is Christmas for the next upcoming summer. So we just had Christmas 2023. We're in January 2024. Now's when you start to see search volume increase. But you're still like 200 days or 170, 80 days away. And if your average booking lead time's 100, you should be priced 25 to 35% higher, and you should have your highest available minimums. Let me give you an example. I have a super high demand property. It's the number one revenue producing property based on location and size in all of the Gulf Shores market. It's tier 2. It's not beachfront, so it's across the street in the West Beach part of Gulf Shores. It's a 6 bedroom, actually 6 bedrooms, 4 baths. It looks brand new. It was new construction 2 years ago. I built it. It's got a pool. It's got bikes. It's got all the amenities. It's awesome. My wife, who's an incredible designer, designed it. It's beautiful. And I'm in for like $900K, and it does over $350,000 a year in revenue. And one of the big reasons is because of this pricing strategy. I've taken 4 bookings since Christmas. 4 bookings since Christmas. That's essentially 2 weeks as of this recording. The average booking is 24%. 24% above my max ADR if somebody's booking within 2 weeks during the summer. Like, my max ADR is usually around $2,200 a night for those properties. I'm literally getting $2,500, $2,600 a night, but here's the most important part, the minimums. Right now, I'm on a 7-day minimum, Saturday to Saturday. So literally every one of those bookings that's coming in is $17,000, $18,000 a week. Whereas we're looking at like $14,000 a week, $13,000 to $15,000 a week. So I'm adding, if I sold out July, I'm going to add $8,000 to $9,000 in profit. $8,000 to $9,000 in profit. That's why I don't really care about the gross revenue. What I'm trying to do is to maximize profit. Then as I get closer to that 100 days, then I'm going to start to lower the pricing. And I'm going to do it by a percentage that I can automate inside of Price Labs to lower it like 3% or 5% a week until I get down to that standardized rate for me, which is still going to be like that 40, 50% above my neighbors and my competitors that are around me. But the far out bookings, I am absolutely annihilating the ADR, which is going to just increase my profit. Now let's flip that switch. If you have one of those average properties, you should be doing this exact same thing right now, but at a little bit lower. Instead of 25, 35%, probably 10 to 15%. And then incrementally lower the pricing to where you get in line at your booking lead time. Now, what happens when you're not booked and you're inside that booking lead time? That's when you have to incrementally start coming down as well. So I look at, if you have a 100-day booking lead time at day 120, so 20 days prior to, and then 20 days after, that's the prime booking zone. That's a 40-day booking window. You need to be at your prime booking ADR. Once you go past that 80 days, that's when you need to start lowering your pricing. But you also need to consider going to my 3-2-1 strategy. And that is a 3-day minimum with a 2-day gap, and then you upsell and downsell the 1 day. So what I do when I drop from 7-day minimum to 3 days, and I don't go to 5 and 4, I literally go from 7, not to 6, not to 5, not to 4, all the way down to a 3-2-1. And the 3-2-1 strategy, you get into the 3-2-1, and it's a 3-day minimum. You do gap days at 2 nights, and then you raise your price from the 7-day to the 3-day by about 25%. Then on the 2-day, you raise it another 10%. So now you're 35% higher. The 1 day, you're raising by 50%. And here's how you leverage the 1 days, right? So people are going to book the 3-day minimums. Then they will be able to come in. And if you have a gap, if you're booked Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then you got Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you have a 2-day gap. That 2-day gap, a setting you can set up in Price Labs, allows you to take a 2-day booking only in the gaps when you're still having a 3-day minimum, but you're raising the price. Why do I do the 1 day? Because inevitably you'll end up with a 1 day. I think I did 7 days on my Dragonfly property. I have a house in Banner Elk, North Carolina, a pretty big one. It's also a super property. But even right now, as I'm recording this, it's ski season, and I'm booked at about 85% occupancy in December, January, and February, but I'm using that one day and that 50% price increase to sell early check-ins and late checkouts. And what I'm saying by that is like a full day. So if my average Wednesday rate is around $600, I'm raising that to like $900, but then I'm going and offering a 50% discount at like $450 to $475 for them to be able to do an early check-in. And I'm not talking going from like 4 p.m. to 2 p.m. I'm talking, hey, you want to arrive at 9 a.m., 8 or 9 a.m., drop by yourself off and go hit the slopes? I can do that for you to 50% discount. Just got to secure the previous night. Hey, if you want to check out at 4 or 5 p.m. instead of 10 a.m., so because you're already booked, so get a full extra day on the slopes, that's how I'm leveraging that. And there's a whole kind of script I have in my library on how to do that, but that's where I'm sending those emails and those messages to my guests about 10, 11 days in advance, and I'm getting about a 60% conversion. So think about that. That orphan day for 99% of hosts is going unbooked. So in a 3-month period, December, January, well, really January, February, March for the Banner Oak, North Carolina property in a ski market, I typically am seeing about 11 or 12 of those days be orphaned, and I'm converting 6 or 7 of those. So let's take 7 of those conversions at an average price point of $475. I'm not real smart, so I'm going to round that up to $500. That's a $3,500 pure profit. Pure profit. Doesn't cost me an extra cleaning fee, doesn't cost me anything, and the house is going to stay heated. Utilities are going to be there. There might be very small incremental costs, like pennies on the dollar, but I'm adding $3,500 in profit to my bottom line. These are the things that you have to do to be able to outperform the collapse of 2024. The last thing that I want to leave you with, if you have one of those average properties, the first thing I want you to look at is your bedding. Think about the psychology of how you position and how you market with the person that's coming in to book your property. And for me, I get like 71% of my bookings are female. And I do these super properties, these high-end luxury properties, but her buyer persona, the avatar is wealthy Wendy. But there's also, small business Bob. Small business Bob is the one that's booking that $200, $300 a night vacation rental that's, 4 blocks off of the beach, or is 2 miles or 3 miles from the ski resort. It's not ski in, ski out. That's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath for him and his wife and his 2 kids. Right? So really what you want to do is, and this is really specific. You don't have to have a luxury property. Any property. I'm going to use the Smokies as an example. If you go to Airbnb and you type in Smokies and you go look at properties that are of any price point except for $1,000 and higher, you're going to look at $200, $300 a night. Don't even care the bedroom count. You're going to see the very traditional kind of log-looking rustic beds, and you're going to see the red and black, like Black Watch, bear and moose and trees and all that type of bedding on almost every one of those properties. That's the herd, folks. That's what everybody does. You need to be different. What do you see if you go Google Four Seasons Hotel or 5-star resorts and hotels and look at their bedrooms? And this is where your booker, the person that's making the reservation, is going to sleep. I'm going to pause here for a second because I want you to understand something super important. The people that are booking your properties want to stay in a property that's nicer than their home. Let that sink in for a second. Now visualize where they're going to sleep. Visualize how your couch is staged. Does it have comfy pillows on it? Does it have a throw blanket to keep them warm in the winter? Does it look like the last 90 seconds of an HGTV remodeling show? That's what's going to move the needle for you. And one of the most low-cost, effective ways to do this, because it renders in your listings very, very well, is getting rid of that old bedding, the green, the plaid, the bears on it, the Black Watch, whatever it is, and go straight white. White linens, white coverlets, white duvets, whatever you're using, pull them back, and then do the 9-pillow effect. You can look at any of my properties. You can look at how my wife designed. She has 4 king-size pillows, 2 soft and 2 firm. 2 soft, 2 firm. We stack them up against the headboard on the back of each other. In front of those are 2 king-size shams. Even on queen-size beds, you want to use king-size pillows. Then there's 2 queen-size shams. Then there's 2 European pillows. Those are the big square 24 by 24 inches. They're all white. Now in front of them come 3 accent pillows, 2 smaller squares, usually 12 by 12, 14 by 14, 16 by 16, and that's the accent color. That's the secondary color. You should have a primary, secondary, and a tertiary color. And then there's typically like a 6 or 7 inch tall and maybe 20 inch, 24 inch long that goes in front. That's the tertiary accent color. Those first set of accent pillows, the 2 that are there, the 12, 14, 16 inches, those need to match the throw that should be either laid out at the end of the bed, folded up, looks really nice, or kind of crumpled up and layered over the corner of the bed. That's what 5-star beds look like. That's like a $300-400 investment for like a king-size bed. If you don't have much money and you have like a $200,000 or $300,000 property, just do it in the master, because that's where your guests are going to be staying. That's where the booker is going to be staying. It exudes luxury. That's what we're trying to get into, the psychology of conversion inside of your Airbnb and Vrbo listings. We have that bed set up even on our bunk beds for the kids. And it makes a huge difference in your photos, a huge difference in the psychology of what somebody's thinking about how nice your property is going to be, regardless of price point. The second tip that I'm going to give you is your artwork. Your artwork, most of the properties that are underperforming look like Kirkland's threw up inside of your property. And there's all these small little tchotchke things all over every single wall. You do not want to have small, 12 by 12s and have 6 of them on a wall. You don't need the clamshells and the fishing nets, and you don't need the bear heads and all that type of stuff. They know where they're going. Everybody else has that crap. Do something different. Bigger artwork. My wife just finished designing 2 6-bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, mega super properties, pools, hot tubs, all that shit. Beachfront in the OBX, in Duck, North Carolina, in Outer Banks, and in South Corolla. Massive properties. She drove down to Nags Head and grabbed 21 pieces of artwork from Home Goods. That's the secret of designing a restoration hardware property on a Home Goods budget. That's what me and my wife do. That's how we maximize our return on investment. That's what creates a super property, folks. A super property is not the biggest property. It's not the most expensive property. It is the property that maxes out your return on investment. She paid an average of $127 for these 3-foot by 4-foot pieces of artwork that look absolutely amazing. Bigger artwork. You can go to Etsy and buy a print, and then you can go to like frames.com and have them printed out and get a frame. And instead of going and buying a $600 piece of artwork, you literally can find your surf, your mountain, your ski, whatever you're looking for, and literally get it for like 25% of the cost. That $500 piece of artwork you're picking up for $100 to $150. That's how you save money. That's how you improve your property. That's how you start building a super property. And folks, that is how you're going to combat the collapse of short-term rentals in 2024. Now, I'm just going to ask you one thing. If I've done anything for you, any value in this video, please hit that subscribe button, because there's more coming down the pipeline. Happy hosting, everybody.